as officers, we're always told that the most important leadership quality that we're supposed to embody and have, right, is selflessness. How selfish is it if you stay in past the time that you have to just to pick up another promotion? And so I really had to balance that out and be like, you know what? What can I live with the most? Or what am I prepared to live with the most? Running my family through the mud for another 3 years for no reason, right? Can I live with that guilt? Or can I live with the remorse of not having gotten promoted and potentially moved up?
Hello and welcome to the new Mission Career Transition Podcast. I'm your host, Chris Caprellian. I'm joined by my sister, co-host, and HR pro, Alexandra Caprellian. Today, we have a different type of episode. We're going to talk to two individuals, Michael Novotny and Ramiro De Anda, founders of Project Cincinnatus. They're both PhD students, and they're doing what they can to help service members and first responders and other guardians overcome life's challenges and figure out what they want for their own future and find greater purpose in life. But they're doing it through a non-traditional means. I really enjoyed this conversation. I think you will too, so stay tuned. Michael Novotny and Ramiro De Anda, welcome to the podcast.
Oh my God, welcome.
Thank you, guys. Thanks for having us.
Hey, well, this is great for me because for Ram and I, it's kind of a reunion. I don't even remember where we served at. I just remember you got out before me.
Yeah.
And you've got a beautiful beard, and I just love your beard and your locks.
Right now, it's not at its fullest. It's not at its height. So it used to be longer than Mike's, and then I chopped it. I've cut it off and grew it out, and it's gone through phases.
Oh, now you're just making him jealous.
That's right.
My money is on the fact that when Chris retires, he's gonna have the nicest beard any of us has ever seen. It's gonna be majestic. I guarantee it.
That's right.
Yeah.
I'm going for the Mike look. I think it's because
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah, we don't have much going up here, so we got to have it over here. Yeah.
Well, for the listeners, kind of the thing that we do to kick off every recording is we give everybody an understanding of who you are and where you came from. And first, I'll ask. We'll start off with Mike on this one. Where did you grow up, and can you just tell us what you did in the military?
Yeah, so I grew up in the great state of Illinois. The traditional lands of the Ojibwe and Peoria, Kaskaskia, all of these wonderful tribal nations. So I got to give a quick land acknowledgement to them. And but I grew up in a town about 2 hours south of Chicago. I enlisted in the military when I was just finishing high school and started off as a mechanic. And I ended up wanting a little bit more of a growth edge. So I changed jobs, went into military intelligence, and finished out my career doing that. So all kinds of wonderful intelligence opportunities, most of that working in the special operations community.
Ram?
So again, my name is Ramiro De Anda. I just go by Ram because I don't think I've met anybody that has the tongue strength to roll that many R's. Unless you're from El Paso, right? But
this gringo failed horribly.
It's Ramiro, right? Yeah, Ramiro, yeah. So Ramiro Metztli De Anda, it's my full name. I'm from El Paso. So, but we actually came here when I was about 3 or 4. We're actually from Mexico. We're from South Mexico. It's a place called Jalisco, San Julián, Jalisco. We're connected to my dad's tribe. We're Chichimeca. We're Mexica tribe people. But I grew up here in El Paso. And so El Paso is my home, obviously. What I do in the military, that's a good question. So I enlisted in 96. I started off as a field artillery guy. And then I did a lat move into admin, right? And that's when I did most of my enlisted time, about 8 years. And then I applied for ECP, and then I became an officer, and I became a logistics officer. In addition to being a logistics officer in the military, I was also a recruiting operations expert. So I was recruiting, right?
Really?
Yeah, I was a RS OPSO and I was an EXO as well. And
Oh, where at?
in Fort Worth. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
And
Cool.
so, yeah, so that's basically it. 22 years. Mike, 22 years as well,
20,
right, Mike?
20, right at.
Yeah, there you go. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And thank you for your collective service. Appreciate it. Let's get into the nitty gritty though. And we've got two guests on, and so they're probably two different stories. One of the things that we're focusing on, just as I am, is understanding people's why behind transitioning out of the military. In your case, retiring. And maybe Ram, if you could start off, just kind of explain what was your impetus for retirement, and kind of what was your thought process and experience.
Yeah, it's a great question. It's a loaded question. So I'll try to be as I'll be as
that's right.
as possible, right?
Full magazine.
Yeah, no, yeah. It's kind of it's one of those like sad but happy type of endings, right? And so I was the last tour of duty that I did was at the U.S. Naval Academy, where I was an English professor there, and so the monitor comes down, before I PCS. And they're talking about how we're, in a very critical MOS and they need us, blah, blah, blah. And so I had already been a major for 4 years. So I was already in zone for lieutenant colonel. And so it came time for me to, PCS. However, Chris, like I told you before, I have a son who's EFMP, right? I have he's 25, he's about to be 26. But he has a mental disability, right? So even though he's 26, his mind is like a 3-year-old, right? So he takes, he needs a lot of care, right? Especially now being a man and he has man needs, right? Or manly needs. And so the monitor's like, hey, you need to go to Okinawa. I'm like, fine, let's go. I'm happy to go, right? I'm happy to go anywhere I'm being sent. I've always done that. But when it came time to cut the orders, the EFMP program at Headquarters Marine Corps, they said no. And I was like, okay. So they said that they didn't have the services for David on Okinawa, which is, it's not true. So the monitor's like, hey man, well, guess what? You're going to go by yourself. And at that time they had transitioned from 1 year to 2 year on the company tours. And obviously I can't go, right? I have a son that I need to take care of. That's why he's under the EFMP program. Well, they wouldn't budge. And I was like, okay. They're like, well, you're going to go, but you're going to go for 2 years. Like, hey, man, I can't go without my son. I can't go without my family. Like, I need to take care of my son. That's why he's under the umbrella of this program, right? So I can care for him. Didn't seem like they care too much about that, unfortunately. So, I was looking for other options. Like, hey, look, I can't go by myself, but you can send me anywhere else you want to send me. Send me to Camp Lejeune, send me to 29 Palms. Like, just send me with my family, send me to the hardest job that you have. It doesn't matter. I'm gonna blossom, right? I'm gonna rock it. Doesn't matter, right? And I don't want to throw away a promotion that I worked hard for, And so it didn't work out like that. They didn't want to work with me. Something about, it was my time to rotate out because my overseas control date was old, Chris, which was not true because right before I went to the Naval Academy, I was in Afghanistan. But I got short toured. I only did 4 months as opposed to 6 because I was PCSing to the Naval Academy, which they knew before they sent me anyway, right? So there's that whole thing, right? Yeah. And before I get into the Naval Academy, I was at 1st Marine Division, particularly 1-4, and I went to do the 31st MU. So right before I went to Afghanistan, like the year before, I was there. So I was gone, but they didn't see it that way. Some technicality. They didn't want to send me to another duty station. Long story short, my colonel, who I will not mention his name, but he's just an amazing guy, by the way. He fought for me really hard with the monitor. Well, the monitor's boss, who was a full bird as well. And I was listening in that conversation. I was in the same room. And they basically said, hey, he either takes these orders or he can retire. And that's what happened, right? Like it was hard. It was bittersweet. Like I said, especially having, been a major for 4 years and being in zone and having, had a successful tour at the Naval Academy. And I wasn't ready to retire. But you know what? this is where I said that it was a bad story turned good, right? Because it kind of forced my hand, man. It made me think of something that I hadn't thought about, right? As officers, we're always told that the most important leadership quality that we're supposed to embody and have, right, is selflessness, right? How selfish is it if you stay in past the time that you have to just to pick up another promotion, right? And so I really had to balance that out and be like, you know what can I live with the most, or what am I prepared to live with the most? Running my family through the mud for another 3 years for no reason, right? Can I live with that guilt? Or can I live with the remorse of not having gotten promoted and potentially moved up, right? You know what I'm saying? Like, which one can I live with the most, right?
Mm-hmm.
And when I started seeing things like that, I mean, life is about perspective, right? And when I started seeing things like that, I was like, the choice was really clear. I'm like, I'm not going to be selfish and go to Okinawa by myself just because I want to get promoted, right? My family needs me. And anything past 20 years is because you want to, right? Not because you really have to. And so at that moment, I was like, you know what? I can live with the regret of not having done what I wanted to in the military, like get up to where I wanted to. But I sure as heck cannot live with the remorse of having done it to my family when I really didn't have to do that, right? And so I explained all that to say that it's not what I had envisioned at the end of my career. Like I had aspirations of becoming, a regimental commander and so forth. But you know what? It didn't work out like that. God had different plans. And now looking back on it, I'm really happy about the way things worked out. Because now I get to be with my family every day and I get to be a part of their lives. I get to take care of my son, my adult son who's disabled, and be in his life every day. So it worked out. Again, very long-winded way of saying that sometimes the things that we want aren't necessarily what's best for us. So yeah, that's how I transitioned out.
Wow. Well, sounds like the righteous call.
Mm-hmm.
The righteous call paid off. Mike, what was your why on getting out, and what was your transition experience like?
Well, I think I definitely relate to Ram's story. My exit was also bittersweet. And, for me, I ended my service here at Fort Bliss at the Sergeant Major Academy. And, for me, I like to consider myself, pretty driven, hard charging, pretty focused individual, climbed to the rank of first sergeant. I did all that, did my first sergeant time twice. You got picked up to come to the academy, and life was pretty good. But, obviously you don't make it almost 2 decades of service without some issues. And for me, it was physical. I was really trying to kind of just keep going, although my back and, hips and just all these other things were telling me it was time to go. By the time I was sitting in a chair at the Sergeant Major Academy, it was to the point where some days I could barely even sit there. I'm getting epidural injections every few months to keep the pain down. And, I went to the doc, and the doc was like, wow, you should really start considering, after he looked at my MRIs and all that stuff, he's like, you should probably start considering your quality of life after the service. And, so that was kind of one of that decision point for me. And just when the way he said that, I was like, wow, totally right. Just thinking about raising my kids, being around for the grandkids and being mobile. And, it was a tough choice, but yet at the same time, it felt like the right choice. So I ended up, making the decision to go ahead and separate and retire. And, for me, luckily, I also had some amazing things going academically. I had was just on the tail end of finishing my graduate degree in humanities studies. And that was huge for me. I really loved learning about, the ideas that had shaped humankind from the dawn of man all the way until present day. And at the end of my graduate degree, the capstone, we were left with, to answer the question of, what's your contribution to humanity? And for me, that was a heavy question, and one that I didn't take lightly. And although I really am proud of, my military service, there was a part of me that felt like, for me, the most authentic, genuine version of myself was someone who is an artist, is a creative, is someone who wants to work in healing spaces. And so it just felt right to transition out and into my civilian role as a health, wellness, and mindset coach. And so here I am.
Both of you taking family into consideration on that transition. And also what I find interesting, and I don't know, maybe you could comment on this. Mike, you were in Intel, and Ram, you were in logistics, but both of you have a background in the humanities and probably a connection to the arts as a means of expressing oneself. Did it feel as though when you got out of the military and the structure that is being an active duty service member, was that an opportunity to find new artistic or creative outlets as a process through your transition?
Ram, you want to go ahead?
Yeah, that's a great question, by the way. One that I think I appreciate more than most people, just because of the trajectory of my career trajectory towards the end. Like I said, I finished my career at the Naval Academy, teaching English, teaching literature, right? And it's not something that I had planned for, to be honest with you. It just kind of happened by chance. I got a call from then the chief of staff for the director at the Marine director of the Naval Academy by the name of Jen Greaves. And it's a wonderful person, by the way. And so she just like, hey, do you want to come work at the Naval Academy? I was like, doing what? She's like, teaching English. I was like, can you hear my accent? I can barely speak it. Right? But I guess what they had done, they had built a query in McTIFS, and they were looking for officers that were about to rotate out that had degrees in the humanities, right? Smart on them, by the way. And so that's kind of how I got fished into it. Chris, you were RSCO, right?
Yes.
Okay, so I had orders to go to 1st Marine Corps District to become the AER for 1st Marine Corps District. Went and spent 3 days with the guy I was going to replace. I saw your face, and the monitor was really angry because I was a 4802 and there was only a handful of us that can go and fill those billets. Anyway, this lady calls me and she's like, hey, Colonel Montanus at the time, another great officer, by the way, he wants you to come work for him. Right. So that's kind of how I got pulled into the Naval Academy, because I had a humanities degree. I had a humanities graduate degree. And so they pulled me in there to teach, English. Anyway, to come back full circle to your question. I tell you, it really helped me see past my Marineism, right? And so like this, how we're kind of, I don't know, very narrow-minded and very myopic in the way that we see the world as Marines, I think. And so it put me right in the middle of the world of humanities and social sciences, and being able to reconnect and be reflective, be a critical thinker, navigate through the literature, not just literature, but through literacy itself, right? Through the domains of literacy, to see things in a different way, right? Having colleagues that are naval officers and colleagues that are civilian professors, tenured professors, that helped me reconnect with that side of myself. That again, I was just thinking Marine Corps, kill. There's a lot. How about preserve? How about not kill? How about I don't know, take care of people and see them for who they are, and an appreciative inquiry and things like that. So I was able to reconnect with that side of myself that I hadn't really been a part of for quite so long. And so my transition out into education, and then follow on higher ed pursuits was really easy because of that. just being in an academic environment for the last 4 years of my career in the Marine Corps, my mindset shifted. Right. I mean, I'm still very proud of being a Marine. You have to be when you work on the yard, because there's only a handful of Marine Corps officers that work there. And you're the gatekeepers of the Marine Corps and the kids that want to go service like Marine Corps. But at the same time, anchoring back or anchoring and being tethered to a humanities perspective or a humanistic approach to leadership, right, is really what I'm trying to say. It really puts things into perspective, because you know what? Those kids that were there, my job was to not prepare them to join the Marine Corps or the Navy. My job was to make sure that they were going to be the right people for those enlisted Marines and sailors that they were going to lead, right? So they were going to be the people that they deserve, not the people that they wanted to be, right? And so, yeah, I use literature in that way. I was like, hey, guys, literature and writing composition and rhetoric. I was like, guys, they're like, sir, why is it so important why are you being so hard on us on the essays and the way that we write and concision writing and all this stuff? You know why? Because you have people's livelihood in your hands. If you get out of here and you're a sucky officer and you're writing a really bad fitness report, right? Or you think you're writing a good one, but you can't really, you're not really being fair and being clear and concise and congruent and coherent with the things that you're doing. You have the potential to steal money and food away from that service member's family and their table, because you don't know how to communicate straight up, right? And so all those connections, right? Like it going back to the humanities, right, and social sciences. I mean, I think that's something that the military in general doesn't do a very good job of, right? I think it's seen as a weakness, right? And because when you're kind of operating in that space, things seem a little bit more subjective, right? And I don't think the military likes that subjectivity, right? Everything's kind of lockstep and very systematic, but there's a lot of goodness to it because it opens up your mind, right? It helps you. Just be a lot more analytical and critically conscious of the things that you're doing, right? And the people around you, right? And they feed you and you feed them. So again, very long way of saying that the last 4 years of my career helped me transition into what I'm doing now. But it definitely served as a catalyst for, future academic work that myself and Mike are doing.
Mike, did you have something you wanted to add?
I mean, Ram, I love what Ram just said. And I think for me, just reflecting on my job as a intelligence professional and Ram had mentioned critical thinking. Right? I think that's a huge part of being an analyst. And, I think for me, looking at different places around the world, trying to understand what's happening politically, economically, socially, it really, all of those things really made me a curious person. So for me, like as an analyst, my curiosity just grew and grew and grew. And thankfully, I found the humanities, and it really kind of scratched this itch that I had and helping me really try to dig for answers. Like I said, what does it mean to be human, to want resources, or to fight for power, or it's just all of these questions. And for me, my career was a beautiful, just kind of interwoven relationship between what I did as a job and then what I was studying. And it just so happens too that for me as someone, again, I'm an artist as well. I've painted and done some type of visual art type stuff for most of my life. And so that's also a very important part of the humanities. And so, after a while, just being in the humanities studies really helped me to figure out how to use my military service and my military experience as my best muse for my paintings. And so, it was really beautiful relationship, definitely.
You know what? Let me add another thing, kind of adding to what Mike was alluding to. Very well said, Mike, by the way. And so I think, we're operating and kind of living and navigating in this world of the humanities that, today, like myself and Mike do, like, And then looking back to when we were in the military and in that system, right, and looking at, for me, it seemed like like looking back on it now, and I don't mean to be too derogatory, but it seemed very monochromatic, and so like it's either black or white, and now we're operating in this palette of colors, right? And I think, and I could be wrong, right? And this is just my opinion. I think what makes that possible is positionality, giving a shout out to philosophy, right? It's all about being able to, okay, we're looking at something this way, and this is the way we're used to seeing it, right? But we get comfortable, right? Because we can count on it. It makes us feel good, right? Especially if it fits that archetype, right? And everybody is looking at it like that. And if you're that person that's not doing that, then you get kind of like, I don't know, kind of like castigated, right? But the idea of positionality is being able to see the same thing, but from a different point of view, right? It, even temporarily, right? And it just really informs how you see the world, right? And all the operators and agents within that, I guess, that rhetorical situation, what's happening in that happenstance and everything that's happening, right? Those actors, right? Actor network theory, right? Latour, I'm going to throw that in there. So there's a lot of things that are operating within that space that you need to be very aware of, right? And I think the humanities broadens your aperture, right? It helps you understand more. I think Mike had talked about a global view, right? It's important to have a global mindset. And I think operating in the humanities, again, it helps you do that. That's why I really like the idea of like, being in a monochromatic state and now working with a full palette of colors, right? And you have to not only be able to do it, but you have to be willing to do it. And I think a lot of service members, when they transition, that's very hard for them, right? Because how do you let go of what's comfortable for you, right? Especially if you don't know how to fill it in with something else that's positive.
That's great. And I see, I know we're having this conversation about viewing the world through different lenses. And I think this is a great segue to talk about the project that both of you are working on, because I do see parallels and you'll probably touch on that. So to kind of clarify, because I definitely want to make sure we spend time on this, both of you are PhD students. I can't remember where.
So I go to Southwestern College in New Mexico, in Santa Fe.
All right, great. And so maybe if one of you could start off, just talk to me about Project Cincinnatus. Cincinnatus?
Mm-hmm.
Did I say it right?
Cincinnatus.
Yeah. So both of you are working on this. Could one of you please just provide us the origin story of it and what your mission is?
Yeah. All right.
Well, I'll start off, and then Mike, we can riff it, right? Because Mike and I, we're really good at riffing together. We work really good.
Oh, let's buckle up.
So Cincinnatus, like, again, both literally and figuratively, like, these things kind of intersect. But he was a retired general, right? He was a retired Roman general, and essentially he was called back to service to serve as a dictator twice, actually, right? And what makes Cincinnatus such a special guy, he, even though he was a Roman general, right, had a lot of understanding of what's going on in the government. He was called upon by the people to basically bring order, right? And so he is this guy. He's the representation of the veteran who leaves military service to go work the plow, which is what he was doing. Essentially, he was working his land. But then when he's called to pick up his sword again and serve the people, right, he does, because he can, right? And so, again, it's Cincinnatus was a figure of, Republican and civic virtue. Essentially, he was a paragon of civic virtue. Again, he was a man who gave up his simple, cozy life to once again serve his country. And this is what Mike and I are doing, right? And that's like the engine of Project Cincinnatus, right? The idea is that we are returning to service to, because we can, because we can and we must, right? And so this is where our PhDs they intersect, right? Where Mike is doing a visionary and leadership PhD. Right,
yep,
Mike?
Visionary practice and regenerative leadership.
And mine is in rhetoric and composition, right, at the University of Texas at El Paso, right? So what we did is like we got together and we coalesced a primary focus of research, right? Which what we call regenerative rhetoric, Chris, right? Regenerative rhetoric and leadership, right? So it's a combination of both of our PhDs. And what we're trying to do is we're trying to form interdisciplinary pathways that we can explore to help veterans heal, right? Through different ways, right? Yeah. And so I'll let Mike take it from there, because Mike does a way better job.
No, man, you got it. I love it, man. Yeah. So, as Ram just alluded to, it's about using spoken and written word as medicine, and really trying to help, veterans and our guardians not only explore what it means to serve well, but also to live well. And for us, that's why we hold Cincinnatus very dearly to our hearts. I mean, he definitely was an amazing, inspiring individual to look up to, and a very humble person. While many leaders would have maybe stayed in the position of dictator much longer, Cincinnatus decided, hey, I'm going to go back to plowing the farm. And what an act of humility, right? That's huge. That's huge. And so it's an honor to call this Project Cincinnatus, and I think we draw a lot of strength and inspiration from that. And it honestly, so far, it's been a lot of fun. Our goal is really to help veterans and guardians explore a plethora of topics through discussion and writing, and things like fostering a sense of place, and as Ram talked about, civic duty, exploring leadership. I mean, there's so many things. Reclaiming agency, right? Our sense of agency. So it's a lot of fun to dive into these topics with folks and open them up to perhaps some new ideas. Right? One of the things we talk about is unlearning what we know to relearn something else, to relearn something new. And so that's an important part of what we're doing too.
So do you do this in like group cohorts, or kind of like, what is it like if I were to participate? What should I expect?
Yeah. So right now we're offering monthly virtual meetings where once a month we'll get together, we'll gather, and we'll explore a particular topic. And so this month, actually on Wednesday, we'll be holding our meeting where we talk about character traits and values, and we open that up. And so, it's the character traits and values that we may have learned in our time in service in uniform, but also we want to talk about, what character traits and values do you embody out of uniform. And so really just trying to unpack a lot and really help our veterans and service members truly get an honest look at themselves. I think that's what this is about, is that expanding conscious awareness of the self and our place in the world.
No, yeah. I mean, beautifully said. I mean, again, the chief aim of what we're doing is to promote self-development, right? Not just self-development, but self-empowerment, right? And we combine what we know, right? And I'm gonna italicize what we know, right? Because we're not experts by any means. We're just people that want to serve. We just want to share the information that we have with other people, right? And so we combine, like, Mike's, visionary wellness-based activities, right? My regenerative rhetoric, which is a term that I coined, that I'm writing in my dissertation, and then we use other innovative, like literary learning techniques, right? To help, essentially help people, like Mike said, expand their conscious awareness, right? And really, like, if you think about it, it's all about exploring identity, right? Like, who are you now, right? Like, who are you out of the uniform? And really, the reclamation of agency, right? Like, who am I now? Like, what sense of control do I have? Do I have the ability still to guide myself in life and make the changes that I need to make? But at the end of, but it takes a very honest self-appraisal, right, of where you are now, right? And so we help we're aiming to help veterans answer that question for themselves, but it takes a very conscious effort to look backwards, right? And we don't want to do that. A lot of us don't want to do that, right? Because it's like breaking up with that girlfriend that you loved, right? She was the love of your life, and she's with some other dude now, right? And so like, what do we have left? We're in the dating scene, kind of, you think about it, and a lot of people, that's uncomfortable for them. But again, I think it boils down to that, that mental wellness and care, and that continuity of care that we're trying to provide, by using different learning techniques and strategies to help people really reclaim that agency, that, and that sense of identity, because it is very hard when you leave the uniform. What are you left with, right? That's the $1 million question. It's like, what are you left with? Who am I? Who am I outside of this uniform? Like, who am I outside of the that group of people that had those shared values and perspectives, like, and now you don't have that anymore. And so that's what Mike and I are trying to provide. And it's not just for, like, we use the term guardians. It's that the term guardian, just to be clear, isn't just veterans. It's for first responders as well. So Mike does a lot, and he'll talk about that. He does a lot of work with Border Patrol and Customs and people that are in uniform, and he just basically gives them a space to heal, right? And that healing takes on a lot of different things, there's a lot of different ways to heal, right? So he explores those, and that's what we're trying to do with Project Cincinnatus as well, right? Again, I'm going back to what I had italicized, like what we know, right? We're not therapists, we're not licensed therapists, we're not psychologists, we're just two dudes that have been through it, and we're trying to help other people through it as well, right? We're kind of like you, but on the back end, right? You're trying to help people put on the armor, right? To quote Marlantes and Mike, who put that in his book. But we're the people on the back end, trying to help those that didn't put on that armor to transition out. So again, there's a lot of goodness, but I think at the end of the day, we're just trying to provide a positive, creative, emotional outlet for veterans and first responders, guardians that have transitioned, and they want to come to a safe space to be able to kind of vet some of those issues.
And what makes, I think, what we have going on very special and magical is, well, one, I think Ram and I, we both, what an honor it is for us to be able to serve as facilitators in something like that. We call it being a firekeeper. As we know, we all carry our individual flames, and sometimes those flames can get a little low. And so it's like, how do we plus that flame back up? And I think one of the best ways to do that is through community, coming together as a collective, and really just maybe starting a collective fire and taking from that fire. And so it's a role that we take very seriously. And as facilitators, I think what really makes it work is that we do try to make sure that we create that safe space, that container for folks, and we establish a little bit of rules, like ground rules, where it's being accountable, right? Holding yourself accountable, and ownership. Own your HIT, basically, right? Like, you got to own what you're coming in with, and having integrity as well, operating with integrity. And so the idea is that hopefully through this work that we're doing, we can help veterans, guardians, first responders to live a life in alignment and their true authentic self.
Yeah. I mean, it's what we offer is not the way, but it's simply a way, right? So just to be clear, it's not a cure, but like Mike said, it's medicine that we're offering. And most of the time that medicine is, it's brought about through self-discovery, right? All we do is facilitate the information for them, and it's super nested with the humanities. So it works well.
And I would envision that part of this process is understanding who we are and what we did and why we did it in the past, and then developing a vision of our future selves. Is that kind of what the process helps produce?
Yeah, kind of similar. I mean, and there's a lot of different components to it. And, I like to say when it comes to helping or coaching someone, it's really a lot of the work has to do with identifying who you are, what do you want, what gets in the way of what you want, how do you get around that, and how do you sustain, how do you sustain that momentum, finding that resilience.
Yeah. A question for the two of you, and maybe this is part of your practice, but maybe you could discuss a little bit about the power of writing. I think a lot of times, and I'm a advocate of therapy. I think those that are, you don't have to have a traumatic event. Well, you don't have to be diagnosed with a mental health disorder to benefit from therapy. And if you are, then you definitely would benefit from therapy. A lot of times that involves talking to a therapist in a chair, but maybe you could speak to just the benefit of also taking the time to write, and how does that help?
I can tell you, for me, one of the things that I love to employ when I'm working with folks is free writing. And oftentimes where I pose a question, I will set parameters of, I may say, hey, you have 3 minutes or maybe 5 minutes to write a response to the question. But the rule is that you just have to keep writing and, just let the words out. Even if it's like, I don't really know what I'm talking about right now. Nothing's going on through my head. I'm just writing a bunch of words. And even if that's what you're writing, great, let it flow. And the idea is to really not allow the conscious mind to really catch up so much, right? It's like through free writing, a certain period of time rather quickly, you'd be surprised at some of the things that, the subconscious is holding that will start to come out. We even use poetry. Poetry is a powerful visionary tool that can also find little words and things that you resonate with and start writing about that. And so, honestly, for me, I think writing is just a great way to find out what's underneath, to peel that onion back. And it reveals the self to the self. So
the PhD that I'm doing is in English rhetoric and composition. So, it's kind of like my thing. Like I'm very deeply rooted in the expressivist theory, expressivism. Where we focus on language as a tool for personal and social expression. Right. The idea is that expressivism essentially is a pedagogy of invention and inward discovery. Right. So we're looking inside. Right. But there's also that component of expressivism, which I appreciate the most, to be honest with you, like where it's not about standards of writing. It's not about stylistics. It's not about grammar and rules. It's just like free writing, right? It's free range thinking. It's about, being able to connect with your subconscious mind and being able to express outward. To essentially you're taking out the little seeds that you have in your mind, and through the process of expressivist writing, right, you are essentially putting sunlight and water on those thoughts, right? It has to be right. It has to be done in the right environment, right? And so the idea again is to, promote creative freedom, let people know that they do have that creative freedom, that it's okay to express it. I think we live in a world where, especially as men, like it's kind of like seen in a bad light, if you're expressive. I think we're past that, especially like as veterans, especially, like it's just one of those things. I don't know what it is. I can't really put my finger on it, to be honest with you. I think there's a lot of cognitive bias. Yeah, there's a lot of cognitive bias that comes along with that. I would venture to say that that's actually like there's cognitive dissonance there, because what we see and what we feel is two different things, right? They're misaligned. But it's all about, like Mike said, it's about being able to tap into what it is that you're feeling, and man, just letting some air out of that balloon, before it pops or it floats away, right? So, again, I said literacy is one of the most important tools that God has gifted us with. You know, the idea, again, literacy is not just writing, it's reading, it's speaking, it's listening, right? It's all these domains and modes of expression, right, that are at our disposal. Unfortunately, I don't think a lot of people know how to do it. I think that's the key right there, right? They don't know how to do it, or there's a misconception that something like a genre, like Mike said, like there's a genre of poetry that it's like for elite people. I mean, like they're like flowery words that you have to like demystify, and you have to get through the codes to try to figure out what somebody is saying. No, that's not it. The point is that you are expressing, right? And you're not holding that stuff in because it's toxic, right? And so the composition piece, the writing piece, Chris, like you were asking, for me, like it's very deeply rooted in expressivist theory, Elbow and Murray and people, them kind of academics, where they basically, what they're promoting is free range mode of thought, and it's kind of like playing like tennis without the net, right? So it's just like, hey, let's just get out there and hit the ball and practice, right? Like don't be hindered by the rules. The grammar is important when it counts. I get it. Stylistics is important when it counts. The point is that you're expressing yourself and you're not holding that stuff in, right?
Yeah, that's great. Sis, do you have any questions?
Well, no, I just keep thinking what a certain level of trust that you have on them and they have on you in order to be able to be expressive. Because I can only imagine that there are some that might be very apprehensive, feeling that they're restricted in how they can express themselves. And I'm wondering, how do you help someone find that journey when they know they need to do something? And that's why they're there. They just are too apprehensive or too scared to even trust themselves into being more expressive. Is there anything that you have done to help overcome that?
I think one of the biggest things that I love about my job, I've done different practices, yoga, meditation, breath work, and so I'm really into understanding somatic, the soma, the body, right? And for me, I think one of the things that we really try to also focus on is when folks are coming to us, understanding that there's probably going to be a little bit of a guard, maybe a little bit like they're holding something and they don't necessarily want to let it out, or they're not giving themselves permission to let it out. And so when we're in our sessions, for the first little bit of it, it is about learning how to simply relax and to feel safe, and to feel grounded and centered. And I think also for Ram and I, we've talked about this, but for us, it's important that we model, we be as open as possible. We show that we're men and we're fallible, and, we don't have the answers. We're not like, oh, we're healed, let me heal you. It's not about that. It's for us, there's a component to this too, where we try to be as honest and vulnerable as we can in hopes that it would help others open up and do the same.
I mean, I think I love that question, by the way. That's a really good question. And so it made me think automatically about like Aristotle's triangle of rhetoric, right? And it made me think of ethos, pathos, and logos, and particularly ethos, right? Because as veterans, we really look for credibility in other people, right? Like we want to have that shared experience. There's a big difference between empathy and sympathy, right? And so when people can they can empathize with you, right? It builds trust because there's credibility, right? Like I know that you know how I feel, right? I don't have to try to sell you what I'm thinking, right? Like I get it, right? And that's something that Mike and I really, really considered when we first started this venture, right? And we're like, okay, dude, what's going to make us different than them going to the VA and talking to, the wizard, right? like why would they want to talk to us, right? And the answer, 100 times out of 100 was the same, right? Is that the idea is that there's ethos involved, like there's credibility, like they know that we are them and they are us, right? And again, we don't have all the answers. We're just two dudes that are trying to really like educate other people to grow out and beyond themselves, right? And what is the best motivator that somebody can have when they're in one of these groups, or any group really, where they're trying to, like, self-edify, is model behavior, right? And so we're putting ourselves out there and saying, you know what, guys, we're not perfect, right? We're veterans like you are. We have problems, right? We probably have the same mental diagnoses that you guys have, diagnoses, right? That you guys have. Like, we feel you, like, we understand how you feel. And so we take great care in ensuring that we set up a climate that's friendly to learning, right? And challenging ideas and connecting experiences so that they can feel comfortable, right? One of the things that we do, and one of the ground rules that we had set up very early on, was the pros that we were going to use in these meetings, right? Like, say what you're going to say, right? Don't sugarcoat it. I'm not going to spell it S-H-I-T. Say shit, right? Like, say it, because people feel comfortable like that, especially veterans, right? Because you know what? Some of the most comfortable times you ever had were in the smoke pit if you smoked, right? Or, in the field, talking to your buddies with your hands in your pocket, even though you're not supposed to, right? According to the first one. Hey, cover your ears, first sergeant. You didn't hear that. But again, it's about, creating a space that is, I want to say student friendly, but they're not students, right? So, like, there are guests, right? And it's guest friendly, right? It's guest focused. It's guest centered, right? And so we try to, we drop all these masks and personalities and all this bullshit, right? It's like, hey, let's go for it. It's unfettered, right? And that's important, right? It's important that we provide that space, and that these guys know that we know how they feel, that we've chewed the same dirt. We probably feel the same way they do every single day, but hey, guess what? Here we are. We're not giving up, man. Like, we're still fighting. And I think that's the bigger point, right? And it goes back to Cincinnatus. So that's why I love tying that back into Cincinnatus. Not just literally, but like in a very symbolic and semiotic way, is the idea is that, the fight's not over. You can go to the plow, but guess what? You're going to get called up, and somebody's going to know that you're a veteran, and they're going to call you for help, and you need to be ready, right? Because you have these skills. You have that leadership ability in you. It's been instilled in you, and you understand what it means, right? And what kind of people would Mike and I be if we ignored that? I wouldn't think very highly of myself, if I knew that I can help somebody out and I'm not doing it to the best of my abilities. Again, I'm not a therapist. I'm not a psychologist. I'm just a dude that's been through it, right? And so is Mike, right? And soon you will be as well, Chris. Alex, I don't know your background. You look like a veteran to me.
Well, I'll take that as an honor, but no, unfortunately.
You've got that thing going on. You got that swag.
Well, I can attest. She can swear like a sailor when she wants to.
That's what I'm talking about, right? But that's what I'm saying.
Don't open
but
that
like,
up.
Again, like we have to create an environment where the tonality lends itself for productive discourse, right? Because you're not going to go anywhere. We have to set that mood, for the guys, and it all starts with that commonality, like them knowing that we are them and they are us, right? And we're not here to judge; we're just here to help.
I could keep going on, but we're running low on time. I'm gonna have to ask. I'm gonna go and ask you the question I ask all guests. If there were two things that you want service members to remember as they prepare for their own transition, what are they? And Mike, if you want to go first.
Yeah, one I would say the first one is slow down, take time for reflection and synthesis. Really think about the path that you just came from. See if you can really pick out some of the important lessons that you learned from that, because they should help you in moving forward. Hopefully, one of those lessons, I think I would love service members to transition with is really thinking about the path that they follow. Hopefully, it's a path with heart. It's a path that the military service is difficult, right? It's a lot of upregulation. You're switched on, and so I think for a lot of folks, it's time for them to consider how to down regulate. How to find that path where their nervous system isn't kicked up into overdrive. Because no matter how fancy your resume is, and if you get that, $200,000 job, if you can't down regulate and control your emotions and self-regulate in certain moments, you're not going to hold that job for very long. And that's the problem. That's one of the issues that I think a lot of veterans run into. The other thing that I would say is, don't be afraid to get it wrong. There is no wrong. I think a lot of times when people transition and they think, oh, like I got to get this perfect gig and then everything's going to be perfect for the rest of my days. Sometimes it takes a little bit. It takes a little bit more stumbling. We have to remember that, for many of us, especially if you've done 20 plus years, you came in as a young man, you put your younger version of yourself on hold. You have this inner person in you that was not acknowledged for many years. And that inner person may want to sit around and play video games some days, or may want to not do anything. And so, it's how do you find the right career that kind of allows you to just still take time for yourself and not be just go. And so, if it doesn't work out, that's okay. This isn't a linear path. None of this it's not just a straight line. I like to use fractals as a good example. And, I like to think of life as, for me, like a stream of rivers, and you can float down all these different ones, and it is what it is. None of it's wrong. You're learning lessons down each path. And so, yeah, I guess to quote, like, nothing is wrong. There is no wrong choice.
Ram?
Yeah, great answers, Mike, by the way. We give you the jazz. Yeah. A lot of good. That's hard to follow that. Number one, languishing is real, right? And you shouldn't be ashamed of that. I think we all feel dissatisfied, a lack of engagement. We all kind of go apathetic at some point, right? When you no longer have the military as a support beam. But that's okay, right? And I think a lot of the veterans that I've talked to, and I felt like this myself, right? We're glasses, right? Like if you have a glass is meant to drink out of, right? It serves a purpose, correct? It holds volume, a certain amount of volume, and it's meant to hold liquid and for somebody to drink, right? And so what happens is that I think that a lot of people, and again, I'm not trying to insult anybody, right? But like, I think a lot of people miss the point that when you come into military service, that glass is going to fall off the table, right? Everybody, it doesn't matter what experience you had and how you handled it. Like there's a myriad of experiences, but I think we all experience some form of moral, spiritual, psychological injury, right? Not just in military, but in life. And guess what? When that glass falls off the table and there's no carpet, it's gonna shatter, right? Right? Yeah, or it just might break and it might just crack. What's the point I'm trying to make? The point I'm trying to make is that glass, even though it fell off, it could still, and it's cracked, it could still hold liquid and it could still be useful, right? A lot of veterans are broken, right? And they feel that they no longer have utility. They feel that no longer have purpose, right? Because they're not that perfect glass that they were before they joined the military. That's why I say language, right? Language in itself, again, is, it's analogous to, having a health condition or a clinical illness, right? But I think it's important to understand that we're all broken in some way, shape, or fashion, and there's nothing wrong with that, right? That's why I say that it's real, but it's okay, right? And I think if veterans knew that, transitioning out, and they can kind of understand, and it's okay to not be perfect anymore, right? You can still serve a very important purpose in life. I think that's something that people need to hear, right? I wish I would have heard that, to be honest with you. That's important. And then the second thing is try to remember who you were before you joined the military, right? This is all about identity, really. I mean, it's about like reconnecting to who you were. Try to remember, who you were before you joined. good, bad, and ugly. It doesn't matter, right? Like who am I? Like when I got out, I wasn't Major De Anda. I was just Ramiro, right? And that has to be enough, right? There's nothing wrong with that, right? And so try to connect with who you are outside of the uniform. Like remember that there's nothing wrong with no longer being associated with the military. You just have to try to find your identity. Try to again reclaim that agency for yourself. I say reclaim because I think a lot of veterans lose that, right? They feel that they're too connected with the military and that's what they are, and that's very unfortunate, right? Because there's a struggle. I think I believe that a lot of those mental illnesses or mental health conditions, I think they revolve around identity, right? It's kind of like you're a feather in the wind that you're not really connected to like a bird or a chicken. You're just kind of floating around, right? Again, there's nothing wrong with not being perfect, right? But try to find out who you are. Connect yourself to things that are positive and things that are going to help you reconnect with who you are as a person, right? And the best way to do that is to serve others, right? It helps you to no longer look inward, but look outward. And I think when you lose yourself, you find yourself, is what I think. So,
wow.
You guys can attest to that, right? Because you're doing that.
Yeah.
Kind of. That was beautiful, though. That was, I don't know. I'm still taking it in, Ram. I'm still taking it in.
I have no idea what I just said. So I just had like a Frank the Tank moment, like when he debates in old school. He's like,
everything was black.
Sis and I just had a conversation about that earlier today. No, that's perfect.
Yeah,
trust me, we'll replay it later for you. But no, hey, gentlemen, that was great. I thank you so much for coming on. Before we go, though, sometimes we don't ask all the questions because we've got a limited amount of time. But if there's somebody that's listening to this, how can people find you? How can they follow your content, find out more about Project Cincinnatus or anything else that you're doing?
Yeah. So you can definitely reach us at cincinnatus.elpaso@gmail.com. That's one way. Also, too, one of the things we didn't talk about, but there's some outputs for us that we're working on, and so we're creating this anthology. We're publishing books that are designed to help tell the plight of the veteran a little bit, and hopefully to also promote some healing. And so I know Ram's working on his book. I don't know if you want to throw in a little bit more information on that. We have Guardian Rising, which is available on Amazon, so you can find that book as well.
Guardian Rising on Amazon. Okay, we will put the link in the episode notes as well as the email address. Ram, what else?
So yeah, I appreciate it. Yeah, so we have I guess like parallel lines of effort happening here. I know you like that, Chris. I like that. So Project Cincinnatus, again, isn't just the Guardian circles, right? We're also compiling an anthology of veteran counter stories and the reclamation of agency. So the anthology, because it's a collection of most of the books that we're going to write are going to be a collection of counter stories, right? Of testimonies, right? What we call in Spanish desahogos, right? Like this, emotional output. And so it's real quick. It's 6 phases. Each book is a phase. Phase 1 is complete with Mike's Guardian Rising, Meditations for the Future Warrior, which is an amazing book, by the way. The one I'm doing right now is called Shower Steam Rorschach, right? Remnants and Languishing. And then after that, we're going to use those 2 books to fuel another book, which is a compilation of veteran perspectives. It's called Countering Nothingness, right? So essentially, it's an offensive attack, the offensive attack on spiritual, emotional, and moral injury or death, right? And it's a multi-genre composition. And then after that, phase 4 is what we call a propos erstwhile, right? So it's pre-healing literacy measures, right? So bracing military culture and things to come. And the phase 5 is called Beyond Frankenstein, right? So again, the idea is that we are a compilation of different people when we come to the military, where there's a lot of influence coming in. We are a composite of different folks, but what happens when Frankenstein leaves the castle, right? He sees a pretty girl that throws a flower in the river, and he throws a girl in, right? So we're kind of like, kind of back to scratch, right? Like we're like in an infant stage, because when we leave the castle and we're being taken care of, and we live in a certain controlled environment. What happens when we get out of the military, right? It's what we call exploring the altruist state of otherness that veterans experience post-military service, right? And the struggles of reassimilation into society. And then the last book in our set, which is phase 6, is called The Firekeeper's Charge, right? So the safeguarding, our healing, and who's charged to do that, again, just kind of bringing everything full circle. If you want to get a hold of me, I check my Instagram. I don't have Facebook, but Ramiro Metz with a Z, Ramiro Metztli De Anda. And then I'm on LinkedIn as well. Or you can reach us at the Project Cincinnatus email, and we'll get back to you real quick.
All right, great. Hey, I'm going to get that all in the episode notes if you're listening. Thank you so much, gentlemen. This has been really pleasurable, hearing about a different approach to help others. And that's an understatement. There's no doubt in my mind that what you're doing is going to have a fundamental impact on those that you're serving. And it's inspiring. So thank you very much for coming on and sharing your story.
Thank you.
Thank you guys for having us.
Thank you, Alexandra.
All right. We'll be in touch.
Right.
Mike and Ram have left the virtual studio. All right, sis. What are your thoughts? What are your takeaways?
I feel smarter just listening to them. There's something so calming about them. It was funny because I was just watching one of my favorite TV shows on Netflix. I probably shouldn't say it, but it's not like we're being sponsored. But
no.
There's this show, and one of the episodes was a bunch of guys getting together for lunch every day, and they call it the table of knowledge. And they just talk about everything. And I felt like we just had our own table of knowledge because I had my own crash course of being back in school again. And I just love what they're doing. And I, quite frankly, I kind of wish they had something for people that are not just in uniform, but, or at least some type of program. Because I feel like we're in the same boat of, we're always asking ourselves, who are we? What do we really want? Because you find a job, you stay in that job, you're in that job, and it's been 5, 6, 10, 15 years, and you're defining yourself by that job. And you're trying to find what is your new definition. And I know I'm getting to that point. And so what is my definition? So when they were talking about that, it really hit home.
Yeah, I think there was also what hit home for me was the discussion of a non-traditional approach to getting a person to think differently and talking about the art. I hear them talk about what Ram said, regenerative rhetoric. And I had to think about it really hard. Like, okay, what does that mean? And just thinking about how through language and through writing, we can, in a way, regenerate ourselves. I love the language that they're using because it's so different. And it really causes me to think differently about what it is that they're doing and what they're trying to accomplish and how they're serving other service members and first responders and other guardians. And I think I need a little bit more of that in my life. I think there's a little bit of self-expression that we're not used to because it's just not, it doesn't really fit in the military norm, but, pick an art. Like maybe I need to get back. I feel a little bit, and I talked to Ram about this earlier. I feel a little bit of release when I do free writing. Who's to say you can't get that same release and understand yourself through a different art form? Painting. You don't have to be good at it, but maybe painting does it for somebody. Maybe dancing does it for somebody. It's very not military. Maybe it's fashion. Who knows? But that's, we just don't do that. And partaking in those types of things, perhaps they help us understand ourselves better, understand what we were meant to be as we go forward into any new endeavor. So, and maybe that's going to help individuals that prepare for their transition. So I got a lot out of it. I thought it was a very refreshing conversation. And it was probably the closest thing we've ever done to like a Joe Rogan sit around the table podcast, but not quite as long.
So close.
So close. We just need to have weed. Nope, can't do that. And alcohol. No, I can't keep coherent when I do that. So anyway, and that's it, ladies and gentlemen. That's the end of this episode. If you like what you heard, please consider giving us a 5-star review on whatever podcast platform you're on, and subscribe to our content so that you can pick up the latest episode. If you have any feedback for us, you can email us at newmissionct@gmail.com. That's newmissioncharlietango@gmail.com, and we'll get back to you as soon as we can. We are on Apple, Spotify, and YouTube. And that's recent. If you want to follow us on YouTube, please subscribe to our content and give us a thumbs up. It helps us beat the metrics so that when service members are trying to find information on those domains, it comes up sooner on a keyword search. And we're getting there, folks. We're getting there. So thank you very much for listening. And if you're preparing for your own transition, know that I'm right there with you. So until next time, stay focused.